The attic smelled of dust and aging paper, that familiar scent that sticks to things long forgotten. Sarah Mitchell had been sorting through her late grandmother's belongings in Richmond, Virginia for nearly 3 days when she discovered a small wooden box hidden behind a pile of moth-eaten quilts. Inside it, wrapped in yellowed tissue, was a photograph in a dull, tarnished silver frame. She lifted it gently toward the weak light coming through the attic window. The picture showed a wedding couple from another time. The woman wore a high-neck, lace gown with large puffed sleeves. The man stood beside her in a dark suit with a stiff collar. They posed in front of a simple wooden house, their faces serious in the formal style common to early photography. On the back, written in faded ink, was a date, June 1911. Sarah smiled at first, assuming these were distant relatives she had never met. But something about the image kept bothering her. She took out her phone, snapped a photo, and zoomed in. Her breath stopped. There, placed carefully to the right of the couple and partly hidden by the bride's wide skirt, was a broom. This was not an ordinary broom. Strips of colorful fabric were tied around its handle, and even through the faded sepia tones, Sarah could see markings carved into the wooden shaft. Her hands shook slightly as she zoomed in more. The fabric ties were not random at all. They were knotted in deliberate patterns, and the carved symbols, though worn with age, were clearly intentional. She sank back on her heels, her thoughts racing. Her grandmother had never mentioned this photograph. In fact, she had almost never spoken about the family's history before the 1950s, always changing the topic whenever Sarah asked about their ancestors. Sarah carefully removed the photograph from its frame and turned it over once more. Along with the date, there was a single word written in the same faded ink: truth. The afternoon light shifted, throwing new shadows across the attic floor. Sarah studied the photo again, the couple's faces, their stiff posture, the decorated broom placed so purposefully in the frame. Something about this wedding was not what it seemed, and someone long ago had wanted that truth preserved, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right person to look closely enough to notice it. 2 weeks later, Sarah sat across from Dr. James Harrison in his crowded office at the Virginia Historical Society. Books covered every wall, and photographs from different eras were spread across his desk. He specialized in early 20th century American social history, and his eyes brightened when Sarah set the photograph in front of him. 1911, you said? He adjusted his glasses and leaned in. A fine example of early portrait photography. Very formal composition. The couple looks well off. That dress would have been costly, and the house suggests... He stopped mid-sentence. His finger hovered near the right side of the image. Is that... He pulled a magnifying glass from his drawer and bent over the photo. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he looked up at Sarah, his expression completely changed. Where did you find this? In my grandmother's attic. Why? What is it? Dr. Harrison leaned back, still holding the magnifying glass. Do you know what a jumping broom ceremony is? Sarah shook her head. It's an African-American wedding tradition that goes back to slavery, he explained carefully. Enslaved people were not allowed legal marriages, so they created their own rituals. Jumping over a broom symbolized leaving the old life behind and starting a new one. After emancipation, many black families continued the tradition. He pointed to the broom in the photo. These fabric strips and patterns match that custom, and these marks on the handle appear to be Adinkra symbols from West Africa. Sarah's stomach tightened. But the couple, they're white. Are they? Dr. Harrison asked quietly. In 1911 Virginia, this state had some of the harshest anti-miscegenation laws in the country. The Racial Integrity Act came later in 1924, but even before that, interracial marriage was practically impossible. He turned the photo toward her. Look closely at the bride's face. And the placement of this broom is no accident. Someone wanted this recorded. You're saying my ancestor was... I'm saying, Dr. Harrison interrupted gently, that this photo may document something rare and dangerous. If your ancestor had African heritage but appeared white, she could pass in white society. But including this broom in her wedding portrait took incredible courage. He opened his laptop and began searching databases. We need to identify these people. Do you have names? Any records? Sarah pulled out a small notebook. My grandmother's maiden name was Eleanor Whitfield. Her mother was Clara, born around 1910. But before that, everything disappears. No birth certificates, nothing. That's common for people who were passing, Dr. Harrison said softly. They often had to erase their past. The date, June 1911, he typed quickly. Richmond, June 1911. The search returned. Hundreds of results, births, society notes, business listings. He narrowed it to marriages. Nothing in Richmond itself, he muttered. But that doesn't mean much. They may have married elsewhere or not registered at all. So we may never know, Sarah said. Not necessarily. Dr. Harrison zoomed in on the house behind the couple. Architecture tells stories. This porch style, these windows, common in rural Virginia then. And look, he pointed to the background. Is that a church steeple? Sarah squinted. In the distance, a white steeple rose above the trees. Small town, Dr. Harrison said. Close to a church. That helps. Not every town had a photographer capable of this quality. Many traveled town to town. They spent the next hour cross-referencing photographer ads with small Virginia communities that had similar churches. Finally, Dr. Harrison stopped. Ashland County, about 30 miles northwest of Richmond. A photographer named Robert Hayes worked there in 1910 and 1911. He read from an obituary, known for sympathetic portraits and willingness to photograph all members of the community. All members? Sarah asked. I think, he said, we should go to Ashland County. Ashland County was smaller than Sarah imagined. Its main street still looked much like it had in 1911. The county clerk's office sat in a brick building with tall windows and shelves of old leather-bound ledgers. The clerk, Mrs. Peterson, eyed them cautiously as Dr. Harrison explained. 1911 marriage records? We have them, but not all marriages were officially recorded back then. She hesitated, glancing at the photograph. Especially if there was something irregular. Irregular how? Sarah asked. If the union wasn't accepted, people found other ways, Mrs. Peterson said quietly. They had to. She pulled down a heavy book labeled 1910 to 1912. What names? That's the problem, Dr. Harrison admitted. We don't have names. Just this photo, dated June 1911. Mrs. Peterson studied the image. Her face changed. You related to them? We believe so, Sarah said. My grandmother was Eleanor Whitfield. Mrs. Peterson paused, then reached for a different ledger from a lower shelf. The pages were more worn. This isn't the official book, she said softly. This is the shadow registry. Marriages that happened but couldn't be legally recorded. She ran her finger down the page. June 1911. Here, Thomas Reed and Catherine Miller. Married June 18, 1911. Sarah felt a chill. Church records the next day confirmed it. Reverend Samuel Morris had written detailed entries. One stood out. June 18, 1911. Performed marriage for Thomas Reed and Catherine Miller. May God keep them safe. The broom was blessed and placed in their home as a reminder of her mother's love and sacrifice. Sarah's breath caught. Her mother's sacrifice. Dr. Harrison read on. Catherine's mother, Ruth, is dying. She wished her daughter to remember who she is. Tears filled Sarah's eyes. Ruth was a name she'd seen in an old family Bible. Later entries told of Ruth's death, of Catherine living in town as Mrs. Reed, of letters sent in secret, of a daughter named Eleanor. That was Sarah's great-grandmother. Records followed them to Richmond. Census entries listed Catherine and Eleanor as white, passing, written in ink. Years later, Catherine died alone, but she had bought a burial plot for her mother. She remembered, at the cemetery, Sarah placed a small broom with blue, yellow, and white ribbons at Catherine's grave. We remember, she whispered. An elderly woman approached. My grandmother was Mary Morris, she said. She witnessed that wedding. 6 months later, the photograph hung in the Virginia Historical Society, part of an exhibition honoring hidden histories. Catherine's message had survived. The broom, the symbols, the hidden hand gesture, a map to the truth. Across more than a century, Catherine's voice was finally heard,